The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T, here on Training Camp Confidential, day number 3 of training camp for the Washington Commanders. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So day 3 of camp featured more install, more red zone work. Slight twist, as you heard head coach Dan Quinn talk about in his press conference prior to practice. They were going to work in some play action concepts a little bit today. Have a couple of, games to excite the players, give them a little bit of juice heading into the final day of this group of practices. So what we also learned was that they'll be off tomorrow, right? No practice on Saturday. Come back for another 3-day stretch, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Still don't know exactly, somebody had mentioned pads go on Monday. I haven't been able to confirm that. Not saying that that's not accurate, but just haven't been able to confirm that pads go on Monday. It's going to happen here shortly, but the exact date for me has not come, into focus quite yet. But that is around the corner as they continue through this ramp-up period. We heard from Jeremy Chinn today. We heard from quarterback Jayden Daniels and, of course, head coach Dan Quinn. So we'll talk about what they had to say at the podium today here in a bit. But before we do that, we'll jump into practice itself today and what went down. So first things first, we knew this was going to happen, and it finally did. Jaden Daniels threw his first interception of training camp. The first of many to come. Okay, so I always say this, and I always try to caution you: don't overreact to anything. Whether it's the first 2 days of camp, he was exceptional, right? Outstanding. Don't overreact to that, and don't overreact to when he has some rough days, because they're coming. And not that today was a terrible day. Yeah, he made a mistake. Got picked off by Michael Davis. He was throwing a pass intended for Davion Davis. Michael Davis was able to step in front of the offering and pick it off. I'm more excited about what that means for Michael Davis because, again, I told you they want guys that can take it away. I'm telling you, I think Michael Davis is going to be what Ronald Darby was for this team in 2020. That has been my hottest of hot takes. Right now, if you ask anybody, they'd probably tell you he's not even starting, okay? He's not even starting right now as Michael Davis. Just because he's not starting, and our defensive coordinator, Joe Witt Jr., has already said this, and I believe him when he says it. Don't talk to me about starters. Don't worry about starters. We're rolling up 17, 18 deep looking to whoop people. I sincerely believe that, and I think one of those 17, 18 guys is going to be Michael Davis, and I think he's going to have a profound impact on this team this season. So I'm more excited about him getting his hands on the football than I am, worried that Jaden Daniels threw his first training camp interception. Again, the first of many to come. So I'm not worried. And they put a little bit more emphasis on the run game today, which they've been doing that a little bit more as they continue to ramp up. So we saw or heard about a lot of carries for both Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr. Obviously, they're going to be splitting a lot of the work in the backfield. So there was a lot of emphasis put on that today. Again, if you're going to start working in some of that play action game, got to be able to run the football, sell that fake to be able to set that play action up. One of the big plays of today wasn't Jaden Daniels using his arm, but rather him using his legs on a play where he decided to tuck it and run. He took off. I'm talking slam off down the left sideline. That's something he really has not done this training camp period thus far in these first 3 days. And a lot of that, and I talked about this, first of all, the field has been condensed because they're doing a lot of red zone work. There has been 2-minute situations that they've worked on, so end of the half situations. But even in that, as Dan Quinn talked about, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, he said there's not a lot of install defensively right now. So, You're not seeing a bunch of different coverages. Everything's kind of bland. Nothing's really being thrown at him. So with these basic looks, guys should be open, right? And you're not being flummoxed. You're not being pushed. You're not being rushed. They're not blitzing. They're not throwing these different looks at him to spook him a bit, to make him turn down his first read or his second read. So he's getting rid of the football. So there hasn't been an emphasis put on, hey, don't run. It's just he hasn't had to run. Guys are open. And his first inclination isn't to take off and run. His first inclination is to get rid of the football, get it in the hands of playmakers. So he's been doing that all training camp long to this point. But for one of the first times in camp, he didn't like what he saw. He tucked it and he ran. And this wasn't one of those training camp runs where, you get to the second level, there's a guy waiting on you. They're not going to hit you. They run to you. They act like they're about to touch you. And then they pull up and he just keeps taking off. No. There was nobody on the left side of the defense. He takes off and runs. And in a game situation, I'm not telling you that this would have been a touchdown, but I'm telling you this had a chance to be a touchdown. Okay, it was that kind of a run. So that was one of the big highlight plays of practice today, Jaden Daniels tucking and running. And I don't think a lot of people really understand how truly fast this guy is with the football in his hands. So while you don't see it a lot, and we're hoping we don't see it a whole hell of a lot, hopefully he's getting the ball to his playmakers and not having to use his legs. When the threat of him using his legs does appear, hopefully teams aren't quite ready for the amount of speed that he can bring to the table. So that was another big play. Another thing that we talked about yesterday that kind of finally came into focus today was we saw some shuffling of the offensive line. Even Dan Quinn had admitted that there hadn't been any real shuffling of the offensive line to this point of camp. The first 2 days, the first team O-line was as follows, and I talked about this yesterday on the show, but it was from left to right. Cornelius Lucas at left tackle, Nick Allegretti at left guard, Tyler Biadasz at center, Sam Cosmi at right guard, and Andrew Wiley at right tackle. And yesterday, head coach Dan Quinn talked about, they're going to be shuffling around the offensive line to find out what is the best pairing and grouping that they can put on the field. And the only way to do that is to actually shuffle guys in and out of the lineup. Now, again, it's early. There aren't any pads. So you didn't want to make too much of it. But I told you, I wanted to see for my sake, because this is something that I think is important. Who do you think in your mind are the starters going into camp? That's what the first team and the first set of guys, because they may not ultimately be the starters. And this is what I said yesterday. They may not ultimately be the starters, but what they do have is a leg up on the competition going into this process, right? It's their job essentially to lose. They can lose it, right? Somebody can outperform them and ultimately take over the job of left tackle, left guard, or right tackle, because those are the only three positions that are really up for grabs, right? Center and right guard are etched in stone at this point. Those guys aren't competing other than with themselves at this point. So the other three positions, they're going to have to cement themselves as the best player for that particular position. So we haven't had any real changes until today. They started tinkering with the offensive line, moving guys around. For instance, Brandon Coleman got some reps at left tackle. Brandon Coleman got some starting first team reps at right tackle. Doesn't mean that Andrew Wiley isn't the starting right tackle. It just means they want to see how Coleman handles both sides of the line. Maybe he's better at right tackle than he is left tackle right now, right? Maybe he's better suited to help this team at left tackle. Maybe Cornelius Lucas is playing so well, don't want to take him out. He's one of the best five. But you look over at the right side and you go, hey, Brandon Coleman's playing really well over there. Maybe even better than Andrew Wiley. Let's put him there, which is what I've been asking for. I just want to see it. Andrew Wiley may be the best option at right tackle, but I just want to see what Brandon Coleman looks like at right tackle, right? So they finally threw him over there at the right side, gave him some reps. Obviously, no pads, so take everything with a grain of salt. I think Allegretti has the best shot at left guard, but they're going to move guys around and kind of figure out which pieces fit where. and Dan Quinn talked about that at his presser today, like, wanting to figure out which pieces fit where to the puzzle. And the only way you're going to do that is by jumbling the pieces around and configuring them in different ways to see which way fits best. So we finally started to see some shuffling going on along the offensive line. And for fans like myself and some of you out there, that's music to our ears, because again, we don't know what the best grouping is going to be, what the best five is going to ultimately be, but there's only one way to find out. And you have to start playing around with the position itself and figuring out, which combinations may fit best. So it was good to hear that they're finally starting to do that. Took them 3 days to get in there and start moving things around as they get more and more comfortable. Now, once those pads go on, that's when the real determination, and Dan Quinn has said that numerous times, that's when the real determinations will start to be made in the trenches, along the defensive line, along the offensive line, with the tight ends, et cetera, guys that really need to be able to put their hands on another individual and move them against their will. When the physicality ramps up and you start to see these guys getting after it, that's when they're going to be able to determine, hey, this guy is better suited here, this guy's better suited there, this guy's better suited, over this way. So that's also something that they did today. Another notable thing that took place in practice today. So day 3 of practice officially in the books. Jaden Daniels had a solid day of the 3 days. Today was the least impressive. I don't even know if that's the right wording, because again, it was another really solid day for him. The ball hit the ground a little bit more than it had the previous 2 days, but that's to be expected as more gets implemented, as they start to ramp things up, as more things, they start putting more on his plate, giving him more to think about. Obviously, that's going to bog him down a bit. You expect, more mistakes to happen. And it's good to hear him talk about making mistakes and that being okay. We're going to talk about what Jaden Daniels had to say. He said a lot today at the podium, so we'll dissect what he had to say. We'll listen. We'll talk about what Jeremy Chinn had to say. I'll give you a spoiler alert. Not a lot from Jeremy Chinn, and that's going to be a theme from him, I believe, at these press conferences. But we'll get into that here in a second. And then obviously we'll talk about what head coach Dan Quinn had to say as well. But before we do that, we'll take a quick break, get a word from one of our sponsors, and then we'll come back on the other side and we'll dive into these press conferences and what was said. I'll see you guys on the other side.
Official. The Olympics are here. Sun's out. It's summer. And usually what comes with summer is heat and funk. But the latter doesn't have to. This summer, beat odor to the punch with MANDO Whole Body Deodorant. Make MANDO Whole Body Deodorant your best friend this summer. It's clinically proven to control odors for 72 hours. It's safe for the whole body, pits, package, feet. My personal favorite, your grundle. It stops odors before they start. And it's available in 4 cologne quality scents: Bourbon Leather, Pro Sport, Clover Woods, and my personal favorite, Mount Fuji. So check this out. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash or deodorant wipes. And free shipping. I just used the word free twice in one sentence. Who doesn't like free? Luckily, I have a discount code to help you get hooked on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off of a starter pack. That equates to over 40% off of your starter pack. Use promo code LouieT at shopmando.com. That's promo code LouieT at shopmando.com. shopmando.com. Sometimes the summer heat stinks, but you don't have to. Get Mando and stay fresh all summer long.
So we heard from 2 players, and that's been the theme all week long. You get 2 players and the head coach at the podium. Today was no different. We heard from Jeremy Chinn, starting safety of this team, and he didn't have a lot to say. And I've peeped game with him. He's a pretty serious guy. Doesn't have a lot to say. Man of very few words. I don't think he's afraid of the media attention. I don't think he's one of those guys that's uncomfortable in front of the mic. I just don't think he enjoys doing it. And so he's going to be a minimalist when it comes to his responses. You know, some guys like Terry McLaurin, for instance, you ask him a question and you can get a 4.5 minute answer, right? You can get a 2.5 minute answer. With Jeremy Chinn, it's going to be 2 or 3 words. It'll be 15 seconds. You ask him, hey, how's things going on out there? How are things going out there? Good. That's his response, right? Like literally, that was the question today. Was like, hey man, how's training camp going so far? Good. And they were waiting for more, and he's looking like, you got another question or what? So that's Jeremy Chinn in a nutshell. So one of the questions he actually did, pseudo elaborate on was playing for head coach Joe Witt Jr. or defensive coordinator, Joe Witt Jr. Remember, we found out during the course of the offseason that Jeremy Chinn turned down more money to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers to come play here in Washington, which is something that we're not accustomed to having happen, right? Guys don't turn down more money from a better organization, and there shouldn't be air quotes there. I don't even know why I did air quotes. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a better organization than the Washington Commanders organization right now. Once upon a time, we were right there, if not better than them, in the early 90s, before the downturn. You could argue we were a better franchise than the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though they had won more Super Bowls than we had at that time and still have, obviously. But we're not even close to them right now in terms of how the organizations are run. Yet he turned them down and turned down an opportunity to play for Mike Tomlin to come play for Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn. That speaks volumes as to where this program is going and how players view what we're going to be potentially defensively. And so he talked about the energy and, the ability to do multiple things. His versatility is clearly going to be his calling card. Remember, we talked about this yesterday. Dan Quinn talked about multi-positional players. We're not going to use that phrase, okay? Y'all know what phrase I'm talking about. But he talked about multi-positional players. Jeremy Chinn is one of those types of guys. A lot of the conversation yesterday surrounded Jamin Davis, but Jeremy Chinn is another one of those multi-positional guys that offers you the ability to do, a multitude of things on the field, away from the line of scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage, playing coverage, blitzing, being a physical tackler around the line of scrimmage, away from the line of scrimmage, a guy that can get his hands on the football. These are all things he's done throughout the course of his career. So Jeremy Chinn talked about being utilized in that manner, and that's part of the reason why he was excited to come here. He talked about what an off day looks like. That was something that was a lot of emphasis was put on for some reason. Chick Hernandez seemed to be obsessed for some reason with off days. For whatever reason, I don't know if this was the first time that the phrase off day had been brought up, but he just decided to ask everybody 15 questions about off days. And I'm like, who gives a shit about the off day, right? But Chick seemed to care about it. So, he talked about it's important for recovery purposes. At this point, when you're in training camp, you get an off day, and you've heard head coach Dan Quinn talk about this several times. They go hard. These practices are intense. They ask a lot of these players during their time together. So when they're not together, when they're apart, it is imperative that you take advantage of that physically, mentally. You take care of your body, but mentally you get away from the game, recharge that battery, because when we come back, we're getting after it again, right? So he talked about that a little bit. And then I thought this was an interesting question because it forced him to be a bit introspective. Last year was a tough year for Jeremy Chinn. He talked about it in previous interviews, how last year was tough. Dealt with injuries. He wasn't playing very much when he was healthy. got phased out of the rotation in Carolina. And so he was asked about what last year meant to him, and he talked about gaining an appreciation for the game. When you're, a lot of people take this for granted, or in life, I always talk about sports being a microcosm of life. And a lot of times people take things in their lives for granted because it's there and it's always been there. So they don't think about what it would mean if it was no longer there, right? And sometimes in order to gain an appreciation for something, it needs to be taken from you temporarily. And so football was taken from him temporarily last year in spurts via injury and just lack of playing time. And I think he gained a better appreciation for his love of football. And he also gained an appreciation for taking better care of his body. And he talked about, doing things to take care of his body, to put himself in a better position, to not miss time, to be available for his team so that he doesn't have to come off the field. So that was Jeremy Chinn's presser in a nutshell. Then we get to Jayden Daniels. And a lot of questions about, where he is in his maturation, a lot of questions surrounding competition and things of that nature. So let's get to what he had to say. So one of the first questions he was asked is, what is he looking to show during training camp, right? And he talked about the grasping of the playbook. It's the main thing that he's trying to showcase. I think it is important that you understand that everybody is learning, and we're going to talk about this because it was something that Jayden Daniels brought up during his presser. Everybody's learning a new playbook. That's the beauty of having a new staff come in and being a rookie during the first year of a new staff and the new implementation of a new offense, defense, et cetera, is everybody's learning something new. So in a normal instance, when you're a rookie and you're coming into a situation where you got a staff that's been there for 2 years, 3 years, whatever may be the case, and veterans that have already been there, have already digested the playbook, they're moving at a faster rate of speed. They're waiting for you to catch up so that everybody can move at the same rate of speed. It's a little bit different this year in that everybody's learning. So if Jayden does a great job of digesting the playbook, he can be right there helping facilitate all of the growth that will take place this offseason. And so him talking about grasping the playbook is important because you don't want to be the guy that slows down everyone else's progression, right? Everyone else's growth. So that was something that he talked about. Routine. He talked about his routine not changing. Yeah, they asked him, are you still coming in early? This, that, and the third. He's like, yeah, that's not going to change. This is who I am. This is a part of my routine. This is what has worked for me in the past. If it's not broke, I'm not looking to fix it. So I'm going to continue to come in early. It's something that's worked for me, and I'm going to continue to do that. And that's what he's continuing to do. He's like, everybody's got their routine and things that work for them. Coming in early works for me, so I'm going to keep doing it. Talked about being a part of the team and integrating himself. There's been this whole dialogue around Jayden Daniels that he's been really humble, and you saw it again during the press conference. Every time he speaks, you get the sense that this kid is just one of the guys, right? He's not looking to elevate himself above the rest of his teammates because he's the quarterback. He's looking to fit in. He's looking to be one of the guys, right? But in saying that, obviously you're the quarterback. And whether you like it or you don't like it, you're going to be elevated and put on a pedestal because that's what we do to quarterbacks. That's what the media does to the quarterback. That's what society does to quarterbacks. That's just the nature of the beast. And we'll talk more about that because that was a question of, him being the face of the franchise, essentially, that he had to answer as well. But, he talked about just coming in, working, putting his head down, being one of the guys, not looking to elevate himself over the rest of the team. He's like, if veterans who have done it in this league, and he didn't name drop, but, he's talking about the Jonathan Allens, the Terry McLaurens, the Bobby Wagners, and guys like that. If those guys can come in here and just be one of the guys, well, how the hell can I not just come in here and be one of the guys? Who am I to come in here and want to elevate myself because I was the number 2 overall pick in the draft, right? There are plenty of guys in here who are high-level draft picks. There are plenty of guys in here who have been to multiple Pro Bowls. There are plenty of guys in here who've been all pros, things of that nature, and they're just one of the guys. So I should just be one of the guys. That's his approach, and you love to hear it, right? They talked a lot about the quarterback coaches and how – remember when Dan Quinn talked about how many quarterbacks, former quarterbacks, they had in the quarterback room for these quarterbacks. And at that time, we didn't know that Jayden Daniels was going to be here, Marcus Mariota was going to be here. This was early on in the process before we knew about any of the acquisitions that were going to be made. He just talked about filling out the staff and how many former quarterbacks that were on the staff. So obviously Cliff Kingsbury, former NFL quarterback, David Blau, former NFL quarterback, Tavita Pritchard, a former college quarterback. So that right there in itself, that's 3 guys that used to play the position. Obviously some at a higher level than others, and I think I'm missing one more guy that was a former quarterback in some capacity. I think there was 4 guys when it was all said and done. But he talked about the quarterback room and these coaches, and there are so many different voices, right? Because some of the media members talked about, hey, we see you going through these drills and you're hearing from Cliff, and then we'll see you again, and now you're Tavita's talking to you. And then another time, David Blau's talking to you. So you got all these different voices. He's like, but it's the same message. It may be different voices, but they're all talking about the same things. So it's not like they're confusing us where this guy's telling us to do this and then this guy's telling us to do it this way. It's all the same messaging. It's just coming from different individuals. It just made me think about one band, one sound, right? Like, yeah, it's a whole bunch of different instruments, but it's just one band and one sound. So yeah, it's 3 different dudes talking to him about playing the quarterback position, but they're all talking about the same thing. So it's one band, one sound. So I love that approach, because there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but if we all cooking the same shit and we're all cooking it the same way, then it's all fine. It's all good, right? He talked about the VR tool. That's been something that a lot of fans have kind of have grabbed on and gravitated towards, right? That they're clinging on to is that VR tool that he used when he was at LSU, and how there was this, monumental jump from his first year at LSU to the second year, obviously winning the Heisman Trophy, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people accredited a lot of that attention to detail and some of the growth to that VR tool that he used. And Jayden talked about it as well. And he said, yes, I'm going to continue to use that. It definitely helps. He's like, it gives you an opportunity to get in reps without getting hit or having to be on the practice field, still seeing a lot of things and going through the motions, but, being able to do it without having to take a hit or be out on the field. So he said, I'm going to carve out time for that. We're only 3 days into training camp, so I'm still getting into a regimen as to how camp is going to work. But when I can find the time, I'm going to definitely use the VR tool. So talked about the biggest strides that he's looking to take and what he's taken to this point. He talked about getting comfortable with the system. So that's something that he's continuing to do, right? That's something that you're going to see him continue to grow at and get better at as time progresses. That'll be something that he'll continue to try to grow at. And he's like, what I ultimately want to do is I want to minimize the amount of thinking that's going on, right? I want to be able to go out there and not think and just see the defense, know where to go with the football. If we're going empty and we're spreading teams out, I got to know where my best matchup is and what the coverage is and where the ball needs to go and get it out of my hands quickly, right? So he talked about, wanting to get comfortable with the system, and that's some of the biggest strides that he's taken to this point. trying to minimize the amount of thinking that's going on and just going out and playing football. You know, that's the thing that you see with young players a lot is they come in and their head's kind of spinning because there's a lot of information to process and digest. And, you know, instead of them going out and playing fast, they're thinking that bogs you down. The less thinking you're doing, the more playing you're doing, the faster you can go out there and get it done. So that's what he said. Last time that he wasn't the starter. So the last time he wasn't the unquestioned starter. I know Ben Standing thought he was eating with this one, right? When he asked this question, he was like, yeah, he's probably been the starter all of his life since he was, you know, in grade school, probably when he was playing Pop Warner football. This is the first time he probably thought that shit, right? Because he was the starter his freshman year at ASU. So in Ben Standing's mind, he's probably thinking, I'm going to eat with this one. And he's like, when's the last time you went into a camp situation like this deep into camp without being named the starter? And Jaden Daniels was like 2 years ago at LSU when I transferred over, right? Didn't have the job. It wasn't given to me. I had to go out and I had to earn it. And Ben was like, didn't see that one coming, did you? So it lended itself to the next question, which was, did he mind competing for the starting job? And he's like, yeah, I don't mind competing at all. You know, that's what I do best. I compete. That's what all of us are here to do, compete. And so I don't want them to give me anything. You know, I want to go out here and I want to earn it and I want to compete. And that's what I'm here to do. And I don't mind doing that. So he talked about competing for the right to be named the starting quarterback, which is what you want to hear, which is what you want from your young quarterback. He talked about embracing the role of franchise quarterback. And I thought this was an interesting answer from him because he's done a really good job of being one of the guys, right? Coming in here, being very selfless, no ego, just, you know, wanting to be someone that is inclusive with the rest of his teammates, getting to know everybody and not making it about him. But ultimately, whether he wants to or not, it's going to be all about him because that is what being a franchise quarterback is all about. You're going to be placed on the pedestal. When things go right, you're going to be given all of the credit. When things go wrong, you're going to shoulder all of the blame or most of it. So that is a part. And it's not like this is the first time he's ever played quarterback. He understands this. He's been at 2 different colleges as the starting quarterback. He's seen the ups and the downs. He understands what that entails. He's never been at this level, however, and it definitely ramps up a bit. Playing football in the SEC is pretty damn important, though, and it means a hell of a lot. You know, in certain instances, it means more to play at an SEC school than it does in the NFL, but this is the highest level. And obviously, once he's named starting quarterback and becomes the franchise quarterback, he will be the face of this organization, whether he wants to be or not. And I don't think he's going to have any issues adjusting to life as the face of the franchise. But he talked about, you know, when that time comes, I'll be ready. I understand what comes with it. I understand that, you know, that's the job of a quarterback. Doesn't matter where you are. You could be a rookie like myself, or you could be a veteran. If you're the starting quarterback, this is what comes with the territory. So he's going to be ready. There's no doubt in my mind. He'll be ready to embrace the role of franchise quarterback. On learning a new system, he was talking about, you know, coming in, learning this new system, and, you know, really putting his best foot forward. And it's going to take a while. He understands that. He's like, you know, I want to be prepared to make the necessary adjustments as time progresses, as we get more specific with game planning and things of that nature. I got to be ready to take in all that information. He said, all we're doing right now is basic install. So, you know, it's not team specific to, you know, the team that we're going up against. But when that time comes, I want to be able to not have to be, you know, bogged down by thinking too much about some of the base stuff that we've done. I want that to be second nature, and I want to be able to go out and execute. So you keep hearing him talk about wanting to kind of get the playbook down pat, so that he can go out and just execute, which is something that is paramount to success in this league. He talked about he and Bobby Wagner's connection. They're from the same neck of the woods. So he talked about that, and that's something that they both share, coming from California. And he talked about Bobby Wagner giving him some tips. And this is not the first time he's talked about Bobby Wagner kind of telling him, hey, based off of y'all alignment, some of the splits, I know exactly what y'all are about to do. And so, he's picking Bobby Wagner's brain, and these are the little tidbits that you're looking for. These are the little things that, help you. And he told another story about David Blau talking to him, and we'll get to that here in a second. But he lit up when he talked about Bobby Wagner. Everybody lights up when they talk about Bobby Wagner. His impact has been profound. And again, we haven't played a single snap. We haven't seen this guy in a Commander's uniform yet, and yet his impact has been profound. And just as a side note, as a sidebar real quick, I think we had talked about this briefly a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago or so. Someone asked, how many players would Washington have in the top 100? And at that time, I wasn't sure that we were going to have any, outside of maybe Bobby Wagner, right? Jonathan Allen, Bobby Wagner, and Terry McLaurin are the three guys that have been in the top 100. Terry was at, I think, 97, somewhere in the 90s. I think he was 97. Jonathan Allen was at 62, I believe, 59. I think it was 62, and then something along those lines. And then Bobby Wagner was at 59, if I'm not mistaken, 56 or 59, something like that. So we got three guys in the top 100. That's a pretty good achievement. Two of those guys were not here, or well, one of those guys was not here last year. But we'll see if we can up that number next year, right? But Wagner, all I did in bringing that up was to say that he's still playing at a relatively high level, is Bobby Wagner. So, and that number, 56 or 59, wherever he was, is up from the year before, where he was either 59. If he's 56, he was 59 last year. If he's 59 this year, he was 62 last year. Whatever the case may be, that number is up. So he went up. So he's still playing at a very high level in the league, and he's helping out young guys like Jaden Daniels as well. Jaden talked about the influence of quarterbacks coach, assistant quarterbacks coach David Blau, who was brought in this year to help, obviously, with the quarterback position, and what his influence has been for a guy like Jaden to this point. And Jaden talked about a story that Blau shared with him, like, hey, I've played with 3 number 1 overall picks in the draft, Matthew Stafford in Detroit, Jared Goff also in Detroit, and then Baker Mayfield. So, Blau was well-traveled in his NFL career, talked about, being around those players. And then he's also shared with him, different scenarios. Hey, this is what this defensive coordinator likes to do when you get past the 50 on 1st and 10. You got to watch out for this kind of look or this blitz, this, that, and the third. And those things are helpful, and this is the type of insight you only get from guys who actually played in the league against certain coordinators, so they know some of their tendencies. So this is when guys like David Blau have, really good insight. And there was somebody in the press that I guess they probably were writing a story about David Blau, because we got like 4 or 5 different David Blau questions between Jaden Daniels and head coach Dan Quinn. So Blau was a hot topic of discussion in today's press conferences. Cliff, this was an interesting revelation by Jaden Daniels. He talked about Cliff Kingsbury, particularly Cliff, but him and the rest of the staff making it okay to make mistakes during walkthroughs. And I love to hear guys talk about making mistakes, because that's, especially young guys, that's a part of the process. You're not going to be perfect. Mistakes are going to happen. Like if you watched Hard Knocks with the New York Giants, the offseason Hard Knocks, when Jaden Daniels came in or when they met with Jaden Daniels in the combine interview, he was given a play by Giants head coach Brian Daboll. And Daboll talked about the play, but he changed up some of the things, and it changed the name. It changed the way you spit the play out. So he's like, change the X to Z, change the Z to, the Y, and this, that, and the third. So it changed the name of the play fundamentally. And he asked Jaden to then, with all these changes made, spit the play back to me. And Jaden kept saying the play the way that it was before. He corrected himself, but he kept saying it the wrong way. But he kept correcting himself. But it's that latitude to be able to make that kind of mistake, right? You want your players to be comfortable in an environment where it's okay to make a mistake, right? Last year, it felt like Eric Bieniemy made it uncomfortable to make a mistake. One of the things you never want to do with a kid, right, a small child, is to make them uncomfortable with learning, because part of learning is making a mistake, right? You don't want your child to not ask questions for fearing of being chastised because they don't know something. You want them to feel comfortable raising their hand and asking a question or saying, hey, I didn't get that. I don't understand. Can you explain it to me again? And I love hearing Jaden say that Cliff Kingsbury and the staff are making it okay to make mistakes. That's how you get better. I've said this already. When I was talking to Logan Paulson, I learn more by making mistakes than I do, getting something right and being rewarded for getting it right. I'm more so going to remember when I made this mistake and the corrections that were made. That's going to stick with me more, right? So you want it to be okay to make mistakes, and he talked about that. So I thought that was pretty good. This is why he needs preseason right here, right? This is why I think Jaden Daniels needs the preseason. So check this out, right? Jaden Daniels was asked about, the physicality ramping up here and the pads go on, and does his mindset change? And, what are some changes that have to take place when the pads go on? And he's like, this is a direct quote. He says, quote, pads going on don't affect me. They ain't finna hit me, close quote. He said, or at least they shouldn't, right? So I don't like that frame of mind. I don't like the fact that he's like, they can't touch me, I'm the quarterback. Duh. We all know that that's the case. He's got the gold jersey on for a reason. But I don't want him to get comfortable with not being hit, which is why because even in the joint practices, he can't be touched. You don't hit quarterbacks in practice at all. Joint practices or not. Quarterbacks are off limits at all times. And because of that, there's this false sense of security. They're not going to be able to touch me. I need him in a preseason game just so that mindset switches to, hey, it's a jungle out there. It's kill to be killed. I got to make a decision quickly or else, right? I don't want him thinking, hey, they ain't finna hit me, so I'm straight. I need him to get out there and understand live bullets are flying around and you can be hit. You are not off limits. So I need him to be out there for at least one preseason game. And I think he will be ultimately. But that line had me smiling like, bro, really? Yeah, it don't affect me. They ain't finna hit me. So I'm like, come on, bro. But that was funny. I thought this was another really interesting quote. He says, if I fail, I learn from it. He was referring to, training camp and, joint practices and the trajectory of everything that's going on and, what he's looking for from this entire process. These early stages of training camp into the pads going on into joint practices, into the preseason. He's just like, look, I just want to go out there and play. And if I fail, if I make mistakes, if I fail, I learn from it. That's important. Because again, I can't stress this enough, and I've been very adamant that you guys have to understand there will be bad days. We might get word out of one of these joint practices that Jaden Daniels was picked off 4 times, right? Like, understand that that's a part of the process, that he will learn from it. He will get better from it. And you much rather these things happen now than when, you know, the regular season hits and they start counting these games for real. So, you love to hear it, right? And then one of the messages he said coming out of the QB room is learn where your hots are. You know, one of the things that was so frustrating throughout the entire Rivera administration offensively is that we didn't have hot reads. There were no hots in Scott Turner's offense, and there were no outs last year in Eric Bieniemy's offense. So you got the play call, you got to the line of scrimmage, and you had to try to decipher what the defense was doing and know where to go with the football. But if they took away some of the things that were happening, there was nowhere else to go with the football. And Logan Paulson talked about it. You know, when I sat down with him, he talked about there were no answers. There would be times where they would throw Sam Howell out there and the defense would take away the first and second read, and there was no answer. There was no alternative for him, and then it would lead to a sack, right? And then they would get mad at him, throw it away. Well, just give me a way to get rid of the football so that I don't have to take a sack, right? Give me an out. Have an answer to what's going on. It sounds like Cliff Kingsbury is going to arm them with hots and answers. So if they come with the pressure, this is where you should be able to go and get rid of the football quickly. There should be an outlet for you to get rid of the ball so you don't have to take a hit. I heard them. He referenced something that made me cringe a little bit, which was get rid of the football, don't take sacks on first and second down, which is standard operating procedure. That's what you tell any quarterback. I just have PTSD because they beat that into Sam Howell's head so much last year that he became a different quarterback from the first half of the season when he was standing tall, delivering a football, making plays, to the second half where he was a sitting duck. He was scared to make a mistake, which is what I just talked about. You don't want guys afraid to make mistakes. Sam Howell became afraid to make mistakes because of what they were beating into his head. I just want to make sure, because, you know, one of the things that they're going to beat into Jaden's head is, hey, don't take unnecessary hits. If it's not there, get rid of it. Live to fight another day, et cetera, et cetera. That's all fine and well, but this guy is a unique talent. And what you don't want him to do is fail to use his unique skill set to hurt defenses, to put them on their heels, to open up opportunities to do other things. And while I think he's smart enough, Jaden's smart enough to understand, you know, when to use his legs, when to be a playmaker, and when to get rid of it. I hope he understands his legs are a massive attribute that, if used correctly, that's going to benefit this offense in ways you can't even imagine. So I just remember Robert Griffin III in his rookie season, Kyle and Mike pounding into his head, bro, first read, second read, your legs are the check down. You don't like what you see, use them. And we saw what that benefited. Like, everybody talks about, well, he got hurt. He didn't get hurt running the football. Like, it wasn't a designed run. The one he got hurt on is if he knew how to slide, a lot of his injuries would not have taken place. The Haloti Ngata hit should never have happened. He shouldn't have been in the air. But because he didn't know how to slide, he was diving and he took a hit that he shouldn't have taken, right? The concussion he got against the Falcons in his rookie season, he didn't know how to slide. So he took a shot from Witherspoon and he got a concussion. These things would not have happened if he knew how to slide, right? So if he took better care of himself, he wouldn't have gotten hurt. But it wasn't because they utilized him as a runner, right? I just hope that they're going to give him opportunities to run. And I expect Cliff to do that. So that was Jaden Daniels. in a nutshell. It was great to hear from the young fella. It won't be the last time we hear from him in camp either. Head coach Dan Quinn stepped to the podium for the 4th day in a row. Remember, he's been at the podium all 3 days prior to practice, and then he was at the podium along with Adam Peters the day before training camp started. So it's been a pretty busy week. He's been very available to the media. I know he's looking forward to this day off as well. He started out by talking about the plan for Jayden, and that they've got a plan in place for him, and they're going to adhere to that plan. They're not going to deviate from what they've got in store for him. And they feel like it's a great plan, and they think that it's being executed very well to this point. So they're going to continue on that path. He talked about Jayden's start to camp and how phenomenal it's been. The first 2 days of practice were exceptional. He was highly accurate. He did the things that they wanted to see him do. He got the ball out of his hands, got him to the playmakers, made really smart decisions. Ball didn't hit the ground a ton in the first 2 days of practice for him. And so he talked about his start to camp. I thought this was an interesting answer from DQ. He was asked about what he looks for in the cornerbacks out on the football field. And, as we listen to him talk more, I told you the beauty of listening to DQ these last 3 days, now 4 days, is that he's given us different things each day. It's not very redundant. Some of that credit needs to be given to the media members for asking different questions. Sometimes they can get redundant and they can ask the same questions, and you can tell, like, bro, y'all asked me this already. I already answered this 2 days ago. I answered this again yesterday. But for the most part, they ask different questions, and so he's given us a multitude of answers. And the other day he talked about what was the importance of defense and what he was looking for. Taking the ball away, the ability to tackle, things of that nature. Today he talked about what he looks for in cornerbacks, right? And the first thing he said he looks for in the corner is the position on the deep ball, where they are in relationship to the receiver finding the ball. You remember what I've always told you. You've been watching me for a long time, so I'd say 6 years or so. One of the things I would talk about with corners, and I had an acronym for it. I forgot what it was now. I haven't done it in a while, but LLCers. That's what I call them, LLCers. So if you watch me for a long enough time, you know what an LLCer is, right? Look, locate, contest. That was what was important to me when I evaluate corners on tape from the collegiate level coming into the NFL. This is what makes me comfortable with your skill set and me determining whether you're going to be a guy that can be a playmaker or not. Is being an LLCer. That's a prerequisite for me. If you can't find the football, you can't make a play on something that you don't see, right? So a lot of guys, look, when you're out of position, if you're in phase, you can look back for the football because you're in proper position. For those of you who don't know what in phase means, it means you're in proper position to make a play on the football. So when you hear someone say in phase as a corner, that means you're where you're supposed to be in order to now play the football. If you're out of phase, you're not in the proper position to then look back and locate the ball. That's when you play the man, okay? You don't have time to look back for the ball. You're not in the proper position. So instead of you trying to locate the football, running into the wide receiver, picking up a pass interference, or you turning your head, the ball goes over your head as you're turning to look for it, and now it's a touchdown. You just play the receiver. As his hands go up, your hands go up. As he reacts for the football, that's when you look to split his hands, dislodge the football. That's when you rake and swipe. And so that's the technique. It's kind of like face guarding, but you got to do what you got to do. Quinn wants to see his guys be in phase and then locate the ball, right? So he talked about position on the deep ball. He said, which we haven't had a lot of that in camp yet because, again, as we've talked about, a lot of red zone work. So it's a condensed field. So you're not working with a lot of space. So that's what I talked about yesterday. You haven't seen a lot of deep balls from Jayden yet because they haven't been working with the full length of the field for the most part. to start camp. Yeah, they've had the end of half situations, 2-minute drill, all that stuff. But for the most part, they haven't had, 70 yards in front of them so you could take a deep shot. They haven't had 55 yards in front of them so you could take a deep shot. It's been a lot of condensed fields. So haven't really been able to see these players spread out, sprawl out, and be able to run down the field and try to contest. Excuse me. But what you have is he wants to see guys be LLCers. And so that's refreshing because that's something that I look, right? So you got to look back first, then locate the ball, then you can contest, right? Then you can make a play on the football. That's what an LLCer is for me. His next thing was ball skills. Okay, fine. Now you found the football, make a play on it, right? And I think that's where a Benjamin St. Juste, we're going to see if he can get in the good graces of this staff, because that's something he just hasn't done a good job of to this point of his career, is taking the ball away, right? And then he talked about tackling. You got to be able to tackle as a corner. You're out there on an island a lot of times. If they throw a hitch, a 7-yard hitch, and they catch the ball, okay, make a tackle, give up 7 yards. Don't give up 17 yards, right? Don't miss that tackle and force the safety to have to come over, push a guy out of bounds after a gain of 18. Like, instead of it being a minimal gain, now you've turned it into a chunk play, right? Instead of it being a 6-yard gain, and now it's 2nd and 4, and you got a chance to still get off the field in 2 plays. Now you've given them a new set of downs. Now they've eaten up, a fifth of the field because it's an 18-yard gain. Make the tackle, right? So tackling is very important. It is paramount for corners. So he said as we get deeper into camp, pads go on, you'll see more and more of those traits, and we'll understand what we're working with in that regard. Thought that was a great question and an even better answer from DQ. Just getting more insight into who he is as a coach and the things that he's looking for. Finally, somebody brought up the kicker question. I've been asking about this. I've been talking about the kicker question. Like, I am shocked nobody has asked this man about the kicking situation. It is very important, and yet no one has brought it up. I get it. It's easy for it to fade to the back. Excuse me, because it's the kicker. But I'm like, it's still an important position. And while we have a guy, no one thinks that this guy is the guy till he's the guy. So finally, Ben Stanek asks about the kicker. And, DQ gave, his customary diplomatic answer, like, yeah, this is the thing DQ pretty much said. We won't really know about the kicker until we get into a game setting, right? We can put him through all of the different situations. We can make noise. We can say, hey, practice is over if you drill this 47-yard field goal. But until you get in a game setting, extra points, field goals, and then DQ threw in the thing that a lot of us probably don't consider, which is kickoffs. That's going to be key. With these new rules, your kicker better be able to kick off the ball properly, right? In that kicking zone, right? Into the end zone at a bare minimum, but you want him to kick that football into that kicking zone, that landing zone, or whatever it's called, because that's going to give you the best chance to have the opposing team start with the worst field position, is making that ball land in the kicking zone. So not kicking a touchback, because a touchback, I think, gets you to the 30 now. You don't want to kick it out of bounds. That's to the 40, 45. You want it to land in that kicking zone and see if you can't trap them inside the 20, 25-yard line. So finally, we got a kicker question. DQ was asked about Sam Cosmi. Obviously, this is a contract year for him. He talked about Cosmi, him being a really good player, having played against him or coached against him, and feeling really good about okay. So Sam Cosmi is a guy that he feels really good about, as do we. And I think he's going to be a guy that they lean on heavily along that offensive line. You can tell DQ is sick of the Jaden Daniels questions because when somebody finally asked about, I think it was Mitch Tisser, who finally asked about Marcus Mariota, he's like, attaboy. And he was joking, but he was serious too. Because I could tell he was serious because later on in the press conference, when Chick Hernandez asked about Jayden Daniels again, and no, it wasn't Chick Hernandez. It was Scott Abraham asked about Jaden Daniels and how do you address the team about how much is made of Jaden Daniels and this, that. And he's like, only y'all do that shit. I only have to answer all of this shit about Jaden when it comes to y'all. When we get in the building, it's the team. It has nothing to do with Jaden Daniels. He's a part of the team. He's not the guy that everybody's talking about inside the building. So this only happens when you guys are asking about him. You guys make it more than what it is. So he was happy to talk about Marcus Mariota. You could tell. He was like, damn, finally, I asked me about somebody else other than Jaden Daniels. So he talked about Mariota, his impact, the relationship that he has with Jaden. He talked about spending some of his offseason. DQ spent some of his offseason in Hawaii, and the relationship that Marcus has with the island and the people that are there on the island, and how they've embraced him, and the impact that he's had there, because you don't really think about it, but it's a pretty big deal to make it from Hawaii to the NFL and win a Heisman Trophy. Like, Marcus Mariota is the man, back in Hawaii. So his presence is one that's being felt, and I think they really appreciate what he's brought to the table from a veteran standpoint, a veteran presence on this roster. And Dan Quinn also went as far as to say, the beauty of camp is you're installing and it's broad, right? He says as they get into a more particular approach when they're game planning, then you start to figure out, well, this is what works best for this guy. This play particularly fits his skill set. So these are the things that we want to implement. So he talked a little bit about that, because everybody has different skill set in that quarterback room. He talked about David Blau. I told you, I think somebody in the media was writing a story on David Blau and his impact, because there are a number of David Blau questions, but DQ, in typical DQ fashion, does a great job of bringing others into the conversation. And he talked about David Blau, William Gay, Sharif Floyd, and Ryan Kerrigan as well. All doing really good jobs, but them as coaches wanting to help these younger coaches along. He's like, just like we have, things put in place to help the young players along, as coaches, we also have things put in place to help some of these younger coaches along, help them in their growth and development, help them reach the next level as a coach. A lot of these guys are young. I told you the beauty of this staff, and I talked about this last night, and I've talked about this in the past a couple of times. The diversity of this staff is tremendous. I'm blown away by the amount of talent and the different stages that some of these coaches are at in their coaching journey. And we haven't had this. We haven't had young coaches like David Blau, like William Gay. I talked about this last night with the cornerback position. I said we got some young coaches in the cornerback room, guys that played in the league like William Gay. This is his first real opportunity to be an assistant coach. Sharif Floyd was with Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. in Dallas. So they know him. They brought him over. He's coaching under Daryl Tapp. And then Ryan Kerrigan, he got his first break. Was it last year he became a coach? If not last year, the year before. So he just broke in to the coaching, sphere not too long ago. And so all these guys are fairly young. They're coaches with tremendous upside. They've all played the game before, so as Dan Quinn said, they all have a different perspective from behind the helmet, right? Or inside the helmet. So that helps And he said, it's our job to bring them along as young coaches as well. And he's like, yeah, David Blau's doing a tremendous job. And, so are all of the other coaches that we're going to continue to try to help grow and develop. And again, that's what I think is so awesome about the staff that they've assembled. There's so many different types of coaches. And we just haven't seen that in Washington in a very, very long. I mean, hell, even Joe Gibbs, he didn't have a coaching tree. He didn't have coaches that left him, that went elsewhere, became successful coach. We've never had, except for that Shanahan 2012, 2013 staff, where they sprouted off and grew into what we've seen. And everybody keeps reminding us of, damn, y'all had all these coaches and none of them ended up in Washington. But we really haven't, since then, we really haven't had any real coaches here with promising futures. We got that here. We have a great mixture of teachers, veterans that have had their opportunities to be head coaches in the league, guys who have been, coordinators before in the league. And then we got guys who are just getting started, right? I love the mixture. It's a nice group. I'm excited about it. Head coach DQ talked about having something to prove. One of the media members brought up Jonathan Allen talking about every member of the locker room feels like they got something to prove. And DQ's like, good. I'm glad. That's the way we want them to operate. He said, some of mine, and I'll quote DQ. He says, quote, some of my best competitive moments in my life have come from when I've had something to prove, close quote. And DQ said, I've got something to prove. As a coach that got fired, that is getting a second opportunity, there are a lot of people that don't think I'm any good at this, that think I'm washed. He didn't say those things, but he's implying that. He's insinuating that I got something to prove because this is my second go round. And a lot of people think that I'm just a retread coach, another guy getting an opportunity that isn't very good. He's like, Adam Peters has something to prove. This is his first opportunity as a GM. People are going to try to test him and see how good he is. He's finally getting an opportunity. So everybody's got something to prove here. And he said, I love that mindset, right? He was asked, what is the personality of this team? And I loved his response. It was an excellent response. He's like, you can't talk about who you are because there's such a big gap and difference between talking about who you are and actually going out and doing it, right? Which is so true. Too often, people talk about what they want to be, who they think they are. Go out and do it. As a wise man once said, I'm about that action, boss. I ain't like a lot of people, ask me, damn, you didn't tell me you were doing this and you were doing, because I don't talk about what I'm doing. I just do it. I go out and do the shit. And then you see the results. And so he's like, I'm not here to do a whole bunch of talking. I can't tell you what we're going to be because we haven't gotten there yet. But what I can tell you that this team is, and I love this, he said, we got a team full of hustlers. And he said, I ultimately think we're going to be a good physical team and a good tackling team. But I can't tell you that. The pads haven't come on yet. So I can't tell you that we're a really good tackling team. I can't tell you that we're a physical team, which is going to be a hallmark of what we want to be. We want to be fast. We want to be physical. We want to execute. He's stressed that already. All week long, he's talked about being fast, being physical, and executing. So we know that's going to be a hallmark of this team no matter what. But I love the fact that he said we got a team full of hustlers because, again, I've talked about this before DQ even spoke. I said, one thing I feel confident after Adam Peters got this job and he stepped to the podium for the first time, he said, we're going to play with effort and energy. You're going to know you played against the Commanders. And I said, that's music to my ears because that was lacking last year. And I said, if nothing else, I told you already, and I've said this a bunch of times, I don't know from a record standpoint what it's going to look like. What I can tell you is that this team's going to bust their ass and they're going to play hard. And you can, as a fan, you can get behind that. Obviously, you want to see more wins than losses. But if the effort is there and they just fall short for whatever reason, we can dissect that. We can pick that apart. But the one thing you never want to walk away after a ball game saying is, hey, we didn't leave the shit out on the field. The effort just wasn't there. They beat us in the effort department. That's the shit that's hard to stomach. You know, as as an athlete my entire life, the one thing our coaches, the best coaches that I've ever had, always stress to us is, I don't care about, you know, how you go out there and go about your business, this, that, and the third. Obviously, we want results. We want to win. But the thing that you don't coach is effort. He said, I'm going to put my guys out there that are going to give me the most effort because I can coach that. Give me the guy that's going to go 110 miles an hour. Whether he makes a mistake or not is irrelevant. I can coach that mistake out of him. What I can't coach is effort. Either you have it or you don't. Right? You're going to see effort out of this group. You can demand effort, but either you're going to give me what you got or you're not. Right? So he said having hustlers, it tells you all you need to know. Right? He talked about Emmanuel Forbes. So one of the themes of today's show was hitting markers. Yesterday's show was all about work. And he had on a shirt the last 2 days with the Washington W and the word work, right? With the W being a Washington logo, the W logo. And so the theme of yesterday's episode was work. Today's episode is hitting markers. DQ talked about hitting markers several times throughout the press conference. And one of the markers he talked about hitting was Emmanuel Forbes hitting markers. And he said, look, we can't determine the physicality. But he said, one of the markers we set out for him when we first got here is, hey, we want you to gain 15 to 20 pounds. Like right off the bat, I need you to show us that you're serious about making the necessary changes to be the type of player that you were drafted to be. The first thing we need you to do is go out here and gain some weight. Get with the nutritionist, get with our staff, right? Get in the weight room. And I need you to add 15 to 20 pounds. Emmanuel Forbes responded by putting on 17 pounds. Okay. So physically, he's bigger. If that is in fact true, remember, this dude was 171 pounds when he was drafted. If that is in fact true, that means he's up to 188 pounds. That makes him a standard size corner in the NFL. If he's almost 190, 85% of the corners in this league are from 185 to 200 pounds. So if he's in that neighborhood now, we can stop the weight questions. If that's true, if Emmanuel Forbes is 188 pounds, 87, give or take a pound or two, if he's in that 185 neighborhood, we can stop the weight questions. He's just as big as just about every other corner in the NFL. But now the question is, does this translate to more physicality? He didn't tackle well last season. He did not tackle well last season. So he says, I want to see physicality. I want to see him tackle. We won't know until the pads go on. But he did the first thing we asked him to do, which was put on the weight. So he hit that marker, that mile marker. Good for Forbes. Now let's see it translate on the field into what they're looking for from him. And then the last thing that I thought was pertinent from DQ was Quan Martin. They asked about Quan Martin's role. He's only played free safety in this defense. And that's all they've asked him to do. They haven't asked him to do anything else. You know, we've talked about so many times positional players and what guys can bring to the table playing multiple positions or doing multiple things. And they haven't asked Quan Martin to do but one thing. Let's play free safety. And he said, Mike, the first thing out of his mouth was Mike Sainristil. That's the reason we could put Quan Martin at free safety and leave him there. Is now we have a real, true nickel corner that we feel good about. Speaking of Mike Sainristil, I forgot to mention this. A lighthearted moment, a fun moment of Jaden Daniels' press conference. We'll come back. Put a pin in the Quan Martin discussion. I have to do this while it's on my mind. Mikey Sainverstill came up and took the mic after Mitch Tisler asked a question. Mike Sainverstill asked a question to Jaden Daniels, and it was a funny moment. Jaden Daniels was weak. He was laughing. Mike Sainverstill said, if we would have played y'all last year, if Michigan would have played LSU last year, what do you think would have been the outcome? And then he was trying to leave after that. And Jaden's like, nah. Don't leave. You asked the question. I'm going to give you an answer. Come back here. Y'all put the camera on him, right? Jay was like, nah, don't let him off the hook. Don't try to walk away. So he said, which I had number 1 and number 2 defense. Let me help you, Jaden. Michigan had the number 1 defense in the nation last year. He said, y'all have number 1 and number 2. We had the number 1 offense. So I'll take our chances against y'all. So that was his response. It was a cool moment. It was funny. And then as Mike Sainverstill was walking away, he said, hey, that's my bro right there. He was talking about Jaden. And so and those two are very similar. Remember, Dan Quinn talked about how those two were very similar in their demeanor and their approach, how both of them are very humble yet extremely confident, and how he thinks both of them are going to kick ass in this league. So I wanted to mention that because it was a funny moment during the press conference of Jaden Daniels. But back to Quan Martin. Take that pen out now. He talked about Mike Sainverstill being the reason that they don't have to put Quan Martin in the slot anymore. We got us a real slot corner. The first time we've had one since Kendall Fuller 1.0. So, Mike Sainverstill and his ability to play the nickel and his ability to be versatile has allowed them to take Quan Martin and say, you just focus on playing free safety, bro. You just focus. And he's like, Quan Martin's an excellent tackler based off of what they saw on tape coming out of college at Illinois. And last year with him on the field, remember, at season's end, we were very impressed, excuse me, with Quan Martin and his growth and his development. One of the things he did do really well last year was he tackled. He's got ball skills, right? He made a couple of big plays, that the game clinching pick against Indy, not Indy, excuse me, against New England. He had the interception against Dallas at the end of the season as well. So he started to make some plays down the stretch of the season. You could see him growing and kind of getting comfortable. And so he feels really good about his tackling. He said, having a safety last line defense, you got to be a great tackler. Quan Martin is. He loves his ball skills and his athleticism. So he's in the perfect spot. We think he could do. He said he's got ball skills. He can tackle. And he's fast. He said that's a dangerous combination back there. So that was DQ's press conference for day 3 of training camp. So lot was gleaned from DQ all week long, and looking forward to seeing what the guys have in store for us in the next. So, and something else he talked about was these pockets of practice. So it sounds like they're going to be going in 3-day increments. I don't know if that's going to be a theme of training camp where they go 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on, 1 day off, or if that's just for this first, couple of periods, and then, they may go a little bit longer. But right now, 3 days on, rest, 3 days off, right? Or not 3 days off, excuse me. Rest, then 3 more days on, right? So no practice tomorrow. 3 more days of practice, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I would assume that Wednesday they would be off, and then they get back after it Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we'll see if that continues to be the theme, and we'll see when these pads eventually come on. But good start to training camp. Good start to training camp. So I got one super chat, and then we'll get you guys out of here. And this is from my guy, Joe Rockhead. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Joe Rockhead. Right. Lou, what up, Joe? Says, fist bump. Wow. Says, I'm just glad to catch an episode before I have to go to work. Man, it's always good to hear from you, man. I know you told me you just got, the gig and it's been ramping up here. And so you haven't been able to catch us live very often, but it's always good to hear from you, man. I know you always hear in spirit, right? So I appreciate you. He says, I'm always watching, just on the rebound. I just can't wrap my mind around the newness. I still refuse to get excited, but I'm so pleased. You're not that dissimilar from a lot of fans who want to jump in, right? Who want to dive in the pool and just have a good time. They see a lot of people in the water and they're like, man, that looks like a lot of fun. But you've been hurt so many times. You've been disappointed by this organization so many times, including last year, that you're more like, let me stick a toe in the water and just check the temperature and see what's going on. And you're like, yeah, that actually feels pretty good. I'm still a little bit apprehensive to get in though. So you still need to see more. And I get it. And you're not alone. There are a lot of fans that are like that need to see more, because last year was such a disaster. And every time they feel like it's okay to let their guard down, they're disappointed. This is going to be different though. I'm not telling you that it's going to amount to a bunch of wins this season in year one. But what I am telling you is you're going to feel different as a fan this year than previous years, right? Even if the wins don't match up to some of the expectation, you're going to feel good about the future of this team. Like, this is different than anything you've seen as a fan, unless you're 55 years old, unless you're of a certain age, 45, 50, 55, and you've seen the glory years. If you're less than 40 years old, this is different than anything you've ever seen. So you can't say, well, I've seen this before. No, you haven't. You haven't seen this before. and that's why I keep telling people it's okay to be apprehensive. It's okay to have your guards up. This team has forced you to be on the defensive at all times. I get it. But what I also am telling you, and I know some people are like, Louie T, you said that shit before. I've never told you this. I've told you that it's different. I'm guilty as charged. I've said that before. This feels different. That's been the mantra. This feels different. And I've said that. But the difference this year is it feels different. And I added this part because it is different. Because we have a real front office. We have a real staff. We have a real owner. Shit's being done in a manner that hasn't been done this way in forever. You got to go back to Gibbs 1.0 when shit was this tight organizationally. So what I'm telling you is, I get it. And I'm not mad at you for being apprehensive and like, yeah, this is cool, but I refuse to get excited. Cool. I get it. But just understand, this is different. This will be different. Trust me. We got a real owner. When's the last time we had a real general manager? Scott McLuhan is the last time we had, but he had his hands tied behind his back because Bruce Allen was here fighting for the attention of the owner, trying to sabotage that man. This is the first time we had a real GM since Charlie Casserly. You got to go back to the 90s for the last time we had a real general manager. We have a real front office with guys having specific roles. Like everybody else around the league, we've built an ironclad front office. We've built this tremendous coaching staff that's going to maximize the players that they've acquired. There's reason for belief in what's being done. So I'm excited. And eventually, I think you will be too. Good to hear from you as always, Joe Rockhead. Mr. HTTR, been a member for 19 months. Really, truly appreciate you. Who writes, per the presser, first day of pads is Monday. Hashtag HTTC. That's what T-Roy said. First day of pads is Monday. I got to go find that information. I trust y'all. If y'all tell me the first day of pads is Monday, then damn it, the first day of Pats is Monday, and I'm excited and I'm juiced and charged up for it. So I believe y'all. If y'all telling me that y'all have seen that, then I believe that to be the case. I just haven't seen it myself, but just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not true. So I appreciate y'all for getting that information. Bart Scott. Can't wait. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Training Camp Confidential, day number 3 of training camp. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. Enjoy the weekend. No content tomorrow from training camp wise, but I'll put out a little something for y'all to pass the time, and then we'll get back after it on Sunday, right? We're officially in the dog days of summer. Let's get it, right? Until then, though, you guys enjoy your weekend, enjoy your family, enjoy the festivities. The Olympics are underway. Enjoy all of that. We'll come back and we'll chop it up on Sunday when the fellas hit the field. I guess Sunday will be the last non-padded practice here for the short term, because obviously they'll have more non-padded practices, but Sunday will be the last time we will have a practice without pads for the first time, if that makes sense. Anyway, get out of here. Enjoy the weekend. I'll see you guys next time. God bless. Good night.